Okay, we're here with school board candidate Miles Warner. Miles, thanks so much for joining us. And if you don't mind giving us a little background about yourself and why you're running for school board.
Yeah, of course. So I'm sorry, I don't, as Ms. Hoffman just said, I don't know your name, I'm sorry.
Patricia,
I
it's fine.
Tricia, I grew up here. I went to school here and I went to Samo and John Adams. And so, I got a lot from that experience. And I feel a sense of, I don't know, I feel like I owe these schools a lot. And I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and my daughter's in kindergarten. And my son is in 3rd grade and he has an IEP. So he's, engaging with the special education department. And I joined the Roosevelt school site council. And, just to get to know the principal and to kind of be part of what was going on. And the more I engaged, the more I kind of felt like, it wasn't the schools that I grew up in. And I felt like there's some stuff that I think could be better, and I feel like someone has to step up and someone has to go out and do the work of running and do the work of governing. And I'm really invested in it. So I just felt like, a parent approached me and talked to me about it. And it's a lot, it's a lot to take on and it's a lot to do. But I think I truly think that I have a lot to offer, and I think I can make a really positive difference on the school board. I worked for Congress in college, and I thought I would never go back into politics after that experience. I sort of felt like I saw what I needed to see. As you know, I grew up with James Caan, and so I sort of grew up in the world of that community of people that like reformed this city in the late 70s and 80s. So I think I had a kind of foundational understanding of civic engagement, and my mom would drag me to lots of protests and yeah. So, I feel part of me is like, what am I thinking? And part of me is like, the status quo to me as a parent is not working. And the status quo to a lot of parents is really not working. And when I talk to other parents, there's a lot of concerns. We're very concerned with what's going on and with the direction of the schools. And, when I talk to people without kids, there's a real disconnect. There's a feeling of like, well, we have great schools and everything's great. And so I feel in this kind of area where I have to kind of really show people what's going on, because I didn't know, and I feel like it's a difficult thing to kind of sow, because we have great schools, we have great teachers, we have great facilities, we have such potential. But there's a lot of areas where it's not working for our kids. So yeah, that's why I'm running, because I really think that I can make a difference. And I think I mean, 6 of the 7 people on the school board right now don't have kids in our schools, and my wife is an academic, and she was saying there's all these, she was a fellow at the National Cancer Institute in DC, and she was saying that all these researchers, they're doing all this big cancer data, and they have all these ideas. And she's a clinician, and she's like, if these people would just talk to cancer survivors, and I feel like it's kind of the same thing. I feel like if 6 of the 7 don't have kids, they're not engaging at that like real fundamental level. Like, I just talked to my kid's teacher, about what's working, what's not, So before you guys ask me more questions, I think I just want to share an experience I had with you, if that's okay. I was at the groundbreaking the other day at Samo High. I went and Carrie Upton, gave this great speech about what this beautiful building's going to do, and there's going to be yoga studios and dance studios, and this really great, a gymnasium that's going to separate into 3 gymnasiums. So it's got all these multi uses, and I was really moved. I really was. I was like, this is awesome. This is so rad. I'm so glad my kids are going to have this. And then I had this like really profound moment of sadness, because I thought about it and I was like, my kids are in temporary classrooms right now. Like John Muir doesn't even have school. Those kids don't even have school to go to. And they're building this like $150 million building after building a $200 million building, after building a $125 million building that Carrie Upton told us he literally said was obsolete when they completed it. And I just had this moment of like, it's not right. It's not right that my kids are in temporary classrooms. It's not right that John Muir kids are in other schools. And it just feels like the priorities are not connected again to what the kids need. So I don't know. I just feel like that's that experience for me was a prime example of why I'm here and why I'm doing this, So
Thanks, Miles. I appreciate you starting with that example, because I was going to ask you to give some examples when you mentioned the management problems and unforced errors from the current school board. So I think I get an idea of where you're coming from. If you wanted to go into more depth on that, feel free. But also I'm interested to know what specific experience that you would bring to the school board that would enable you to make different and better choices.
yeah, I appreciate that. So I feel like I could talk about the mismanagement for days. I'll give you a couple really quick examples. The principal of Olympic just quit in protest. And in his letter, he talks about how they're not funding arts for the continuation kids and how they're really just funding the bare minimum. And when I hear that to me is a total misuse of funds, because if anybody needs an outlet, if anybody needs a space to be seen and heard and to express themselves in the form of art or dance or photography, it's those kids. Another example, honestly, is just like the active shooter drill. I don't know if you guys heard about that a couple months ago. During the summer, there's an organization that runs John Adams, and the SMPD had an active shooter drill, and they didn't tell the camp. So they had an SMPD SWAT team roll in with AR-15s, and you have elementary school kids just like scared out of their minds, and the counselors are all high school kids. So when I look at that, to me, mistakes happen. Surely communication errors happen. Like I can understand that, but that's a management issue. That's not things not being well situated such that there's accountability and people are on it. Because if you're going to bring assault rifles into a middle school, I think you really need to make sure you check all your boxes and make sure everyone's on the same page. Anyway, why do I think I'm specifically qualified? So I was in the arts for a long time, and then when I had my son, I started working in different areas of real estate, and so I've done a lot of budgets. I've done a lot of project management, and so I feel like so much of what's going on with the school district is unfortunately real estate development, real estate finance, real estate management. Like there's a lot of that. And I feel like I really have a good handle on how to deal with that. I'm also particularly good at dealing with bullies, unfortunately, because I do that a lot in my job. And so what that means is that I feel like I'm really able to hold a line with people, and I'm really able to to demand accountability and that people are taking care of things. I have no interest other than my kids and the other kids in my neighborhood. So I don't really care who we hire. I don't really care who gets a benefit, as long as at the end of the day, it's best for the kids. And I feel like that's something else I bring. And the final thing I would say is that my son has taught me a lot, and raising a kid with special needs is exhausting, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but it makes me really understand how important public education is and how important funding public education is, and really taking care of those kids and taking care of all kids. So I have some ideas on that, but I can see the hands up, so I'll just cut it short.
Well, thanks. Let's go to Melissa.
I have just a short follow-up on your experience. I just so you know, Miles, as also a parent in the district, I also have a third grader. I most certainly, appreciate and respect the important perspective that being an active parent in the district provides. And just one aspect you didn't touch on, because the board, a lot of its function really is to make policy and interact on sort of a political level, helping lobby, other electeds. Can you just speak briefly to your experience in the policy arena and what helps you prepare for that policy function of the board as well?
Yeah, that's a really fair question. So, let's see. Okay, so that is probably, I'm not an academic, so I don't have, a background in academia, which I guess would be the typical sort of go-to on that. I guess my background would be being on the site council, school site council, and really having to read and educate myself and be engaged with all the questions, which last year was particularly difficult because we were dealing with COVID. Obviously, I did a lot of policy stuff in Congress. I mean, I didn't have any say in that, but I did a lot of research and a lot of engagement. And ultimately, mostly what I do is I have to look at the different issues that I'm dealing with, and then I have to make a strategy or a plan with how to kind of match as much as I can, how to achieve as much as I can with whatever I have. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I guess my answer ultimately is that I do my research and I really engage with issues, so.
Thank you. Let's go to Dan.
Thanks, John. Great to meet you, Miles. My name's Dan. I am super interested in like DEI issues, diversity, equity, inclusion issues in the city.
Yeah, me too.
That's awesome. So question about districting. So in your questionnaire, you indicate that you're supportive of district elections for the school board. Of course, we know the California Voting Rights Act was designed to empower Black and Brown communities and promote diverse representation. In Santa Monica, though, when you look at the census data by precinct, the majority of communities of color are spread throughout the city. Contrary to popular belief, the Pico neighborhood is not where the majority of our Latinx population is. It's spread throughout. So in effect, districting would actually crack the power of the Latinx vote in Santa Monica, diluting their power into majority white districts. So knowing that, what are your thoughts? Are you still in favor of districting? We'd love to hear your response.
I'm going to push back a little bit because I think what you're saying has a lot of validity. That it is not. There's not a series of monoliths. It's not like all the brown people live, on these 4 blocks and all the white people live on these blocks. And I don't think that, I don't think that's not what I'd be suggesting. But I will tell you this. If you look at the current makeup of the board, 4 of them live within 4 blocks of each other. So we have 1 Latinx person on the board. We had 2. Now we have 1. She's been on the board for 24 years. Her husband is a big, we don't need to go into that, but there isn't inclusion currently. Currently, the wealthy people who have the time and capital to run for office are the ones typically who are getting into office. And, Craig Foster raised $95,000 to win a Malibu seat. That's what it cost him to win, So my feeling is if Malibu had a seat or 2 seats, they probably 10 years ago wouldn't have wanted to leave because they would feel like they were represented. I think that a Latinx or an African American or any minority person is going to have a better chance of winning a district vote, a district slice vote, when they're not competing against the people who live north of Montana, who can raise $100,000 pretty quickly. I mean, Laura Lieberman's already raised almost $30,000. I mean, that's serious money, and the rest of us, we are behind her because we don't have access to the developers and all the people that she has access to. So I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to very respectfully disagree. I do think that it's more democratic, and I think it's more inclusive if people are running for smaller spots and they're running against their neighbors. And obviously you get into gerrymandering and all that stuff, but I do think it's more democratic. I do. And to me, at the end of the day, that's what matters, is that we're representing the people.
Thanks.
Thanks, Patricia.
Yeah, I have a couple of pretty much short questions. One is, you said your kids go to Roosevelt, which means that you are likely to also live north of Montana. Is that the case?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because when you're talking about districting, that would put you pretty much in the district with all of the other people who live north of Montana.
Hey, listen, I grew up south of Ocean Park. I live in Montana. I lived in Malibu.
I get it. I mean, I do understand that part. Now that's
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so then you also say in your questionnaire that the district has 1.5 administrators for every teacher. That's patently false. You know that that's not true.
No, I don't think that's patently false. I mean, I mean, it depends how you look at it, but I read that a week ago, so my brain is scrambled now, but I am not actively lying to you. That is my understanding. And if I'm incorrect, I will totally own that, but that is my understanding, and I'm not actively trying to get anything by anyone.
Okay, the ratio.
That's the latest ratio numbers.
No, the ratio is about 1 administrator for every 9 teachers. So it's still high. It's still a lot higher than it should be. Okay. Oh, what year did you graduate, Samuel High?
2000.
Oh, you're practically a baby. I say that in a loving way.
Yeah. I'll take it. I wish I felt like a baby.
As one of the young people on the board, I assure you, she does appreciate us.
I feel like an adult a lot with my kids. So
well, yeah, because you're fulfilling an adult role in society. But what Dan was saying was that there are no majority minority precincts in Santa Monica any longer. So
I hear that.
It really has changed quite a bit. You actually went to school when it was when there was the highest percentage of kids of color in the district.
I believe that.
Anyhow, thank you so much, and again, in loving memory of your mother.
Thank you. That's really kind of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia. Let's go to Isabel.
Yeah, hi. So one of the things you mentioned as one of your priorities is helping kids recover from the pandemic. And so I thought I would ask about that, but also to hear you talk about specific programs and policies that you have. So what would be your ideas of how to help kids and families recover from, this 1.5 years deficit that they've had?
Yeah, so this is part of why I ran, because when I was on the site council, we tried to engage in this, and I basically got a brick wall. So what I found out is that this all comes from the district, and a lot of that comes from the state. So there's not that much that the principal could do, despite what she told us. So of course, not of course, sorry. My wife is an academic. She does research on behavioral scientists. And then my son has a psychiatrist, and his psychiatrist is also an academic at UCLA. So I've thought a lot about this, and I think for one thing, we haven't done any surveys. We haven't done any engagement with the kids to see what's going on with them, to try to mark that. So I've researched that, and pardon me. And one of the things we'd have to do is we'd have to survey the teachers would have to basically survey the kids, because most of the school age kids are too young to take surveys. The junior high school and the high school kids, they could take their own surveys because they're old enough, so that we could actually establish where the kids are based on what we would expect for a sort of typical population. And then that would, first of all, at least give us information, right? I think that we need to hire more staff, even if it's not, even if they're consultant staff, not consultant, if they're contractor staff, to come in and be more available, especially to the high school kids who have, lost a year and a half of their socialization at like one of the most difficult times in their development. For the junior high school kids, I mean, these kids, like my cousin the other day just graduated high school last year. She graduated Samuel High, and I asked her what she thought of the Discovery Building, and her response was that she didn't like it because it was all glass, and if there was an active shooter, there's nowhere to hide.
Wow.
I mean, that's what she said.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So that's not really a comment on the building, because it is what it is. But that's the kind of thing that like these kids are dealing with and engaging with. So if we can find the money to bring in people to engage them and to listen to them and to give them a space to maybe discuss these things, because they're already dealing with like a lot of stuff that everybody on this board never had to deal with social media. But you combine that with a year and a half of homeschool and all the trauma that was involved in that, it's a lot. So that's one thing I would want to do specifically, is bring in more mental health providers. And whether we get grants to do that, or whether we find it in the budget, that I'd have to be on the board and have some power to figure out where that money comes from. But that's something I would do. And I know that a lot of the other candidates feel the same way. So I don't think I'd get a lot of pushback. I have another policy that maybe this could be a good segue into, that I think is important. So as I understand it, there's 72 unhoused kids in the city who attend our schools. So I appreciate that you really revere my mom, but my mom was, my mom had some difficulties, and I bore the brunt of a lot of that. And so I understand the feelings of shame and difficulty when you enter a situation and you don't have food or, a proper place to do your work. And I was talking to my kid's teacher today, and she was talking about how she goes to the cafeteria and she gets food for breakfast and she sneaks it in these kids' backpacks. So I would like to propose, when I'm on the board, that we have social workers or caseworkers or counselors, or whatever term we want to use, that follow high-risk kids, whether they're unhoused kids, whether they're kids with IEPs, whether they're kids that we just know are coming from a place that's difficult. However, we would have a criteria, but once these kids are sort of established as part of that criteria, we would assign them someone, and that person would follow them until they graduate. Not they would follow them for a year, or they follow them while they're John Adams or at Lincoln. Like, we would have a through line so that there's a continuation of support. In terms of how to finance that, I feel like we could find the money for that. I really do, and I feel like it would make a difference. And I also feel like it would pay for itself. because when you help kids who need extra help and you do it in a way that that gives them dignity, they succeed, and they do better. I think I personally owe a lot to the teachers at Samo High and John Adams, who went out of their way. Like one of my band teacher drove me to the SATs. The just countless people that came out, like my water polo coach bought swimsuits for me, and I didn't have to talk about it. Nobody else knew about it. I mean, those are the kinds of things that those kids are dealing with, and it's too shameful for them to talk about. And I feel like we are a wealthy enough community that we could support those kids and we could really show up for them, so that would be kind of my pet project personally.
Cool. Thanks so much, Miles. I'm gonna let you go, but I appreciate your perspective today.
I just want to say one more thing.
Sure.
Okay. I think we can find the money for smaller class sizes. And I think smaller class sizes are the best proven thing to help kids of all backgrounds, but particularly kids who are suffering from the achievement gap that is constantly talked about by the current board, but hasn't changed at all or nearly at all. So I think that's a real area where we could make a significant change. My 4-year-old had 32 kids in her TK class. 32 4-year-olds.
What size? Obviously, the size can get a little bit bigger at different levels, but what size do you recommend for elementary, middle, and high school?
I'm not an expert on that, and so I would ask our experts, but I think that kids in elementary school should have no more than 22 kids. I think high school should be no more than 24. And I think we can find the money. I do. I think it's important. And again, I think it'll pay for itself. I really do. So we have enough money as a community. We have enough money as a society. We pay a lot of taxes and property taxes. We really care. People really care about our schools. And I know that we can find the money to do these things because they're worth it and they pay for themselves. Instead of, we're going to spend $500,000 to rent SMC space for Olympic High and we're going to spend $20 million on the mold project at John Muir. How many teachers would that be? So anyway, I really thank you guys for your time. I am truly a lifelong Democrat, so it would mean a lot to me to have your endorsement personally. And I don't want this job, and at the same time, I really, really want this job because I want to do what's right for my kids and for all the kids in my community. So, anyway, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mom.
Bye.